Examples of potential and kinetic energy. Kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is the energy relative to the motion of an object known as energy in motion. Examples of kinetic energy. 1. The marble rolling down a ramp from maximum height, its energy is transformed from potential energy to kinetic energy. 2. The moving cars possess amount of kinetic energy. This is because they have mass and velocity. Recalling the formula of kinetic energy, we now know that while comparing a truck and a car moving on a road with the same velocity, we will come to the conclusion that the truck will have higher kinetic energy because of its large size. 3. A bullet in motion. A bullet fired from a gun has very high kinetic energy, and, so, it can easily penetrate any object. This is because of a large amount of velocity possessed by the bullet. Although the mass of the bullet is less, its high speed renders double the amount of kinetic energy. 4. A revolving flywheel is an example of kinetic energy. 5. Windmills. Windmills form one of the good examples of applications of kinetic energy. In a windmill, when the wind, air in motion, hits the blades, it causes the rotation, which ultimately leads to the generation of electricity. Here, the moving air has kinetic energy that causes the rotation of blades, and therefore, in this example too, the kinetic energy is converted into mechanical energy. 6. A flying airplane. A flying airplane has a very high amount of kinetic energy because not only does it has a large mass, but it also has a very high velocity. Both these figures result in heightened kinetic energy of the airplane when it is flying. This is the reason why airplanes are able to fly high. 7. Walking and running. When walking or running, we possess some amount of kinetic energy. This is why we feel comparatively warm while running or after walking some distance. Sweat is the result of the heat produced by our body due to running. While walking or running, there is a conversion of chemical energy into kinetic energy. 7. Cycling. The moving bicycles possess kinetic energy. The mechanism behind it is that when we start pedaling, we are converting our body's energy into the mechanical form, which is initially the potential energy and ultimately is converted into kinetic energy due to the motion of the wheels. More the velocity, more will be the kinetic energy. 8. Skateboarding. Similar to the case of a bicycle, when a person riding a skateboard is at rest, the kinetic energy will be zero. As the skateboard moves, the kinetic energy gradually starts increasing. Similarly, when the weight of a skateboard's rider is coupled to the high speed of the board, a large amount of kinetic energy is generated. 9. Meteor shower. You might be aware of the fact that meteoroids are scattered in our solar system. Whenever any meteoroid comes close enough to the Earth's atmosphere, it gets attracted by the gravity. As a result, it starts falling freely from the sky at a high speed. At that time, the kinetic energy of the meteorite is quite high because of its enormous size and weight. When it hits the surface of the Earth with such a large amount of kinetic energy, explosions occur. Also, this is the reason for the presence of impact craters on the Earth's surface. 10. Dropping a glass on the floor. What happens when we accidentally drop a glass on the floor? Initially, at the highest point, it possesses potential energy only, but as the gravity works and the speed is accelerated, the mass of the glass and velocity become responsible for the gradual increase in the kinetic energy. At the lowest point, when the glass is about to hit the ground, the kinetic energy becomes maximum while the potential energy becomes minimum or negligible. Finally, when the glass hits the ground and breaks, the kinetic energy is released. Potential energy is the stored energy relative to the position of an object. It depends on the height of an object relative to a reference point. The higher an object is positioned, the greater the gravitational potential energy. Examples of potential energy. 1. Pendulum. Pendulums are the structures in which weight is suspended from a pivot so that they could easily swing, For example, a pendulum clock. If a pendulum is held at one end, it has the maximum potential energy at that time due to its position. But as we leave the bob, this potential energy is converted into kinetic energy. When the bob of the pendulum will reach the other end, before coming back by the same path, it will stop for a second at the highest point. At this resting stage, the kinetic energy will be converted into potential energy. 2. Spring. Elastic potential energy is a form of potential energy which is present in those objects that can be stretched and compressed, for example, a spring. When a spring is compressed or stretched, it gains some amount of potential energy called elastic potential energy, whereas the energy that is required to compress the spring is called the kinetic energy. When a compressed spring is released, the stored potential energy of the compressed spring will again get converted into kinetic energy. 3. Bow and arrow. When an archer pulls back the bowstring, some amount of elastic potential energy is gained by the flexible limbs of the bow. The more an archer pulls back, the more potential energy will be gained by the limbs of the bow due to stretching. When the bowstring is released, the arrow moves forward very quickly. What happens here is that the potential energy that is gained by the bow due to stretching is being quickly transferred to the arrow in the form of kinetic energy, and so, it moves forward. 4. Rock at cliff's edge. A rock on the edge of a cliff possesses potential energy. The potential energy in that rock will be due to its position. As we already know, the energy stored in an object due to its height is known as gravitational potential energy. Therefore, we can say that the energy present in the rock will be gravitational potential energy. And likewise, if someone pushes that rock down the cliff, the same potential energy will then be converted into kinetic energy. 5. Food we eat. Ever thought about how we are able to walk, run, or do any work which requires a lot of energy? Where does this energy in our body to do all the work comes from? As we know that work done requires energy, and we obtain our energy from the food we eat. As explained earlier, there is a type of potential energy present in substance that is called chemical kinetic energy. It is the energy that is stored in the chemical bonds of a substance. The food that we eat has some stored chemical potential energy. When food reaches our stomach, the same chemical potential it into the energy that our body utilizes. 6. Water in dams and reservoirs. The water that is held in dam reservoirs for various purposes like generating electricity in hydropower plants, irrigation, prevention of flood, human consumption, industrial use, etc., possesses some amount of potential energy. Since the water held in reservoirs is at rest and is prohibited from flowing, the energy present in it will be called potential energy. Because we know that potential energy is the type of energy present in objects at rest. When the gates of a dam open, this water, which was initially at rest, will be instantly into motion, and the stored potential energy in water will be converted into kinetic energy. 7. Snow. Have you ever seen the snow-capped mountains that look so peaceful? When fresh snowfall occurs, the snow starts packing the mountains. The snow which is at rest has some amount of potential energy in it. Since these mountains are present at some height, this potential energy can be classified as gravitational potential energy. 8. Rubber band. When we stretch a rubber band, it stores some amount of potential energy inside it. Now, we can easily say that a stretched rubber band will have elastic potential energy stored inside. As soon as the stretched band is set free, it quickly returns to its original shape and the elastic potential energy gets converted into kinetic energy. 9. Wrecking ball. Wrecking ball is similar to a pendulum. When a crane swings a wrecking ball up to a certain height, it starts gaining some potential energy. Just like the case of a pendulum, here also, the potential energy is converted into kinetic energy, which is used to crush the buildings. 10. Fruits of the tree. A fruit hanging from the top branch of a tree possesses gravitational potential energy. When a fruit falls from the tree to the ground, its energy of position, stored as gravitational potential energy, is converted to kinetic energy. The GIF and content of this video is mostly from Google, Studio Sky, and other online sources. Thank you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos. Thank you.